Hello, Karen Sullivan here. I'm here to give you the weekly astrology for the week beginning the 20th of July. So this week feels like a moment between two movements, really. There's something beginning to turn forward with Mercury, while Saturn is turning us back towards the structures, decisions, responsibilities, and the ones that really still need to be examined. And at the same time, we have Jupiter activating that extraordinary outer planet pattern between Aries, Gemini, Leo, and Aquarius. And this is all before the Sun enters Leo and takes its place at the center of that story. So we've got a great deal of movement here, although some of it may remain completely beneath the surface here this week. Jupiter's disappearing into the light of the Sun, Mercury's almost stationary, and Saturn is preparing to station retrograde. So these are planets at moments of transition. They're changing condition, direction, and being absorbed into something larger. And the week is opening with the moon in Libra, and she's recently opposed Saturn in Aries and trined Mars in Gemini, and she's applying to square Mercury retrograde in Cancer. There's a lot going on there. So the moon often tells us how that larger planetary pattern enters our lived experience. She carries the affluences, it's called. But here she's carrying us from Saturn's pressure in Aries and Mars's urgency in Gemini, and towards Mercury reconsidering things as it stations direct. How will we experience this? We might have immediate desires to act, respond, and resolve something. We've got that Mars active in Gemini, so that's where the words, news, information, and competing narratives can move really, really quickly. Yet we've got Mars answering to Mercury. It's in Mercury's domicile. And Mercury at this point is still retrograde, but nearly stationary in Cancer. So we have Mars moving here, but there's a sense of the direction of travel not being completely clear quite yet. Saturn in Aries is also under the rulership of Mars. So this gives us a chain of planetary dependence here. We've got Saturn looking to Mars in its temple. Mars is looking to Mercury because it's in Mercury's temple, and Mercury is standing still in Cancer, surrounded by those questions of memory, belonging, safety, emotional history, the things that are associated with Cancer. So those structures we're trying to create might depend upon a conversation that needs to be completed. So this shows up for us personally through plans that we may have to reconsider. We might have decisions that we've made that are really under pressure here, or there may be a realization that an apparently practical problem has much deeper emotional roots. So collectively, and there is a big story collectively because of those outer planets, we could see institutions and authorities struggling to establish control with that information beneath their decision continuing in its change. And this would be interesting for the new leadership in the UK at the moment. It's kind of unstable. Then we have on Tuesday that first quarter moon in Libra. So it's the first major turning point within that Cancer lunation cycle. I'll pop last week's Cancer new moon video up there because it's held within a larger context you might want to see. That new moon in Cancer seeded themes around home, protection, care, that ancestry and loss and belonging. So this first quarter moon, those themes that were seeded there can encounter that resistance. It's a tension, it's a square to the Sun. So that emerging story with Libra is meeting with other people. So we're looking at competing needs and realities of relationship. And over in my free resource on the portal, it's seen within the story, the myth of Demeter. And this is the point at that first quarter moon where she stops giving abundance to the earth and she takes a step back. So we may need at this point to take a step back and look at the whole picture. We have Libra here that's always asks how we live together, how we relate. So Libra will be seeking agreement, fairness, balance. But the ruler of this Libra moon is Venus in Virgo. And Venus in Virgo is in her fall. She's opposite Pisces, where she's exalted. So she's not quite so strong. But Venus in Virgo always wants to improve what's not working. So she's noticing the details here and any imbalance that's going on. But she'll also be noticing the places where care or more care is required. So when she's at her most constructive, she can help us here make thoughtful and practical adjustments. Under pressure, she can become preoccupied with the things that are imperfect or feel that harmony depends upon managing every single detail. It's more those shadow aspects that can emerge of Virgo. So this first quarter moon can reveal the difference between a workable compromise and an arrangement that's going to be very draining for us. So look out for that. We might need to look at what we've actually agreed to and taken responsibility for, and to assess whether the balance within a relationship or situation is genuine. The square between the sun in Cancer and the moon in Libra creates a friction, but the moon receives the sun because the sun is traveling through her sign. So there's support with that tension. This difficulty that may arise here can help clarify what the new cycle, the Cancer cycle, actually needs here. And then almost simultaneously, we got Jupiter activating that larger outer planet configuration here. Jupiter in Leo is forming a trine with Neptune in Aries, opposition to Pluto in Aquarius, and sextile to Uranus in Gemini. Spoke about that in last week's astrology. I'm using those outer planets here as indicators of the wider collective and generational field. And what is interesting here is the Sabian symbol for the Libra new moon. Let me find it. Just having a look for it. It talks about here a deep sense of participation in and commitment to social processes which seek to bring all people truth and a greater life. And it's talking about passing on generational knowledge. So really is the collective here. So interesting with all these outer planets sitting there. Jupiter is the visible traditional planet carrying that field of the outer planets into belief systems, institutions, leadership. But it's those stories that and narratives we use to understand the world around us. So Jupiter in Leo wants a vision that people can gather around. It's seeking confidence and meaning. It likes coherence, so it wants that coherent sense of direction. That trine with Neptune can enlarge our imagination, ideals, and spiritual longing. And the sextile with Uranus is opening up those new routes of communication, but also discovery and possibility here. Its opposition with Pluto, and again, there are videos that I've already done on this, is bringing this vision into direct contact with questions of power. Pluto in Aquarius is speaking to that power embedded within the systems, within our networks and ideologies, basically within the collective structures here. And Jupiter in Leo can represent the leader, that central figure, or the story that promises to restore confidence. that one everyone brings when they're campaigning politically. We've got story of promises for you all. But the opposition of that Jupiter and Pluto is raising questions around who defines the future and controls the narrative, whose interests are being served. So we really need to look at those narratives. Jupiter is known as a benefic, so there's genuine possibility within the configuration. It can describe the emergence of ideas, technologies, alliances, or cultural movements that can open new routes forward here. But at the same time, we have Jupiter disappearing into the sun's light. At the beginning of the week, Jupiter is combust the sun. So its promise is present, but it's difficult to see it clearly. That's what the meaning of it is. There's large ideas that could be developing behind the scenes, either for you personally or out in that collective. There might be announcements or changes that are approaching, but the full meaning will be somewhat obscured with this Jupiter Sun cazimi coming up. When a planet moves beneath the sun's beams or becomes combust, it loses some of its independent visibility. We can't see it in the sky. So its affairs become drawn into those solar concerns. So we've got authority, leadership, sovereignty, that organising centre. And then on Wednesday evening, we got the sun entering Leo. It's its own domicile, its temple. So that means the sun and those concerns become stronger and clearer. They're more authoritative. So it's moving from Cancer, that sign of the moon, into the place where it has the power to establish its own direction here. And what will this mean? Well, it will mean that leadership and visibility will be brought to the foreground. We might become aware of who's claiming the centre, whose vision's becoming dominant, but also the kind of authority that's emerging. So watch what's happening out there, particularly within political leadership or any visible leadership. So that sun's entry into Leo, also placing Jupiter and the sun together in the same sign, moving towards that cazimi at the end of the month. It's their conjunction. That's on 29th of July. So it could bring a real renewal of confidence, creativity and purpose for ourselves, but also out there collectively. But it can also magnify that shadow of solar power. So it can magnify an overinflated sense of certainty. It brings hubris, really, Sun and Jupiter, but also pride, centralization, or a belief that one person or one vision should dominate the whole. And we're seeing that out there in the world now. That is likely to become really highlighted this week. So look at the news where there are particular nations that are claiming their vision for a whole section of West Asia is the vision, and you know they have the right to dominate everybody's life in that region. Really important to look at that. There may be developments there that may become much more visible this week. So the sun is beginning to take over the pattern that Jupiter activated with those outer planets. So what's beginning this week as a question of belief and collective meaning will gradually become a question of leadership and power. So late on Thursday, we have Mercury stationing direct in Cancer. It's been in its retrograde for a while now. So this is really significant at the moment because Mercury is ruling both Mars in Gemini and Venus in Virgo. So Mars, we have describes action, conflict, the use of force. So in terms of what I've just mentioned, this is one to watch. But Venus is describing relationship, agreement, value, social cohesion. They're both waiting on Mercury. This could be a huge turning point in that story that I've spoken about. So as Mercury changes direction, there may be a shift within the conversation. There may be information that returns, or a decision that's really been delayed might begin to move here. So for ourselves, we might understand why a situation unfolded as it did, or recognize the memory, fear, or old story influencing our response to that. Mercury in Cancer brings information that it's not detached from us. It brings a language that is infused with feeling, memory, belonging. It's very emotive in a lot of ways. So that can concern family, home, community, or stories we're carrying from the past. And when Mercury stations or any planet stations, it tends to be bring a feeling of concentration. And this is Cancer, so water, a lot to do with feeling. So the planet appears from our viewpoint to pause before it moves forwards. So in this case, Mercury is about words, communications, decisions here. So that can feel heavier. Words can feel much more weightier. And those decisions may feel really consequential for us. I think we're being asked to listen really carefully because something important at this point will be trying to find its way into our language. And Mercury, as it stations direct, will be moving very slowly. So that stationing doesn't mean everything suddenly clears. It's the moment it begins to turn. And on Friday, Mercury will form a lovely sextile with Venus in Virgo. So that's offering us a window for practical repair. Venus is in Mercury sign, and Mercury can support her through conversation, interpretation, or attention to detail here. So be open for that window for repair if repair is needed in your life. It can be helpful for renegotiating an agreement or editing a plan that we've been looking at, but also resolving misunderstanding or making small and meaningful adjustments within a relationship. So the repair available is really unlikely to arrive through grand gestures. It's coming through noticing what we may have overlooked and finding the language, the communication, the words for what is actually needed at the moment. And then as we reach Sunday, we've got Saturn stationing retrograde in Aries. And Saturn's known as a malefic, so it has more capacity to work through constructive restraint, accountability, reality testing. But Saturn here is in its full. It's exalted in Libra, opposite where that first quarter moon. So it's actually in its full here. So Aries is wanting to initiate and Saturn wants to slow down. So Saturn considers consequences. It likes to build things that endure over time. So in Aries, Saturn can describe structures created through urgency, through fear or a pressure to act quickly. So if you've done that over that period, Saturn, as it turns retrograde, will be asking us to go back. Now, this could be from the period Saturn first went into Aries it's the 24th of May, 2025. So we're going back a full year here. Did pop retrograde back into Pisces for a while, but from the 13th of February 2026, so the bulk of this year, it's been there and will continue to be there until April 2028. So what we've built since May 2025, those structures we've been putting in will be up for review here. So that can be rules, boundaries, but we can also look at institutions and responsibilities that may need to be reviewed. If there's anything that's been established too quickly, this will probably be the period with Saturn retrograde where weakness is revealed at the foundational level. So if there's an authority there, it might lose momentum. Decisions might need to be reconsidered in light of new information. Saturn really likes to build secure foundations and then what's built on top of it that's going to last over time. But that Saturn in Aries is ruled by the Mars in Gemini, and Mars is ruled by Mercury in Cancer. So once again, that chain is leading back towards language, communication, memory, emotional context. So a structure, any structures we build can't become stable if it's built upon stories, narratives that we've really misunderstood here. And that's also for the collective. So it'd be interesting to watch for those things. But overall, that deeper movement of this week is really complex here. We've got Mercury moving forward and Saturn moving backwards. So the conversation opens up and the structure is reviewed. So Jupiter is activating a powerful field of collective possibility here, whilst disappearing into the sun's light. And the sun enters Leo and begins to claim that center stage in its temple. So we may have something new gathering but it's not going to be fully revealed this week. We're going to probably feel the desire for clarity, confidence, decisive leadership, but the astrology is asking us to pay attention to the foundations beneath the confidence that we place anywhere, whether it's in what we've been building ourselves or in an outside source. So we're needing to look at what story is being placed at the center, and the vision, whose vision is it that we're being asked to follow? And then to look at the emerging structure and ask if it has got that depth, integrity, but most of all, the flexibility to hold what it's promising. So as we get these new leaders in, particularly in the UK, look at their promises. Have they got that flexibility to hold it? Often they don't. They promise to get your vote and then it's got no debt. But in our own lives, bringing it down to ourselves, it's probably a week to move really carefully with any decisions that involve home, belonging, relationship, and responsibility. So that Mercury station can help us recover part of the story, but Saturn's station is reminding us that that understanding must eventually become the structure that holds whatever we're building. The first quarter moon is asking us for movement, but that movement might begin through an honest conversation or a necessary adjustment rather than some big dramatic leap. Okay. And as that sun enters Leo, we can also consider our own relationship with authority. Where are we ready to take greater responsibility for the direction of our lives? And it might be a time to ask questions of where or if we've handed the center of our story over to someone else. But we can look where confidence might need to be balanced with humility, patience, and awareness of consequence. So that basically is the astrology for this week beginning the 20th of July. So we have the planets gathering around a new center, although the meaning of that center is still forming. Mercury is beginning to release the old conversation. Saturn turns us back towards the structures that require attention. And the sun is moving us into Leo to illuminate the deeper questions of power, leadership, and purpose. And that is what I have for you. If you enjoyed that, please like, subscribe, comment. If you want a reading during these huge collective turning points that we're at, basically, nip on over to www.soulsymbols.co.uk. And as I said, pop over to the portal and have a look at the free resources I'm putting on over there. All the links are in the description box below. And I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.